Right now, in a beautiful city somewhere, a young woman sits in an expensive cafe. She has money, education, and freedom. People ask her, "When will you have children?" She smiles and says, "Maybe never. I don't need them." She's not sad. She is not forced. She simply does not want them. This is normal today. But 2,000 years ago, the richest families in Rome started doing exactly the same thing, and it destroyed their entire civilization. 2,000 years ago, Rome was the most powerful place in the world. The richest families, the aristocrats, had everything. They had beautiful homes, servants, endless food, and complete freedom from work. Life was perfect, but around the year 70 BC, something strange started happening in these rich families. They stopped having children. A historian named Keith Hopkins studied this problem for many years. He looked at old documents and family records. What he found shocked him. In 70 BC, Rome had about 600 important senators from the richest families. These families had names like Cornelii, Claudii, Fabii, and Julie. Their ancestors had founded Rome. These names meant power and honor. But by the year 14 AD, when Emperor Augustus died, something terrible had happened. More than half of these families had completely disappeared. Not because they were killed, not because they left Rome. They simply had no children. By the year 200 AD, almost all the original rich families were gone. They had slowly erased themselves from history. The answer is uncomfortable. The Roman rich did not want children because children were inconvenient. When you have unlimited money and complete freedom, children become a problem. They need attention. They need rules. They interrupt your comfortable life. The Roman rich discovered this simple truth. Once you have everything you want, the last thing you want is something that takes your time and freedom away. Ancient Roman writers described what they saw. A writer named Seneca watched the rich families around him. He wrote that the aristocrats could not even get out of bed before noon. They had achieved every honor their fathers had fought for. But instead of being happy, they did nothing. Seneca wrote a famous line that still describes people today. They live as if they are about to live. They were waiting for life to begin, while life was actually happening around them. Another writer, named Juvenal, was even more direct. He wrote that the rich senators' sons spent their entire days at the public baths, getting perfumed and groomed. He described rich women who had been married 6, 7, even more times. But they did not divorce because of cruelty. They divorced because they were bored. They had no children because children would interrupt their perfect, empty lives. Juvenal had a name for these people. He called them autoi, the leisured ones. They had leisure. They had freedom from all pressure. And this freedom was slowly killing them. Here is the part of history that makes people uncomfortable. The Roman rich did not just accidentally have fewer children. They actively chose not to have them. Old Roman documents show that wealthy women used special herbs and plants to stop pregnancies. This happened so often that doctors became worried. It was not hidden or secret. It was simply what rich people did. The poet Ovid wrote casually about his lovers ending pregnancies like it was a normal part of life. A doctor named Sorinus wrote that there was a huge business in selling contraceptive methods to rich people. Nobody was ashamed. They were just living their comfortable lives. Meanwhile, something interesting was happening outside Rome. In the villages and farms of Gaul, Spain, and North Africa, poor peasant families were having 4, 5, 6 children. They had hard lives, but they still wanted families. They still wanted to continue their family lines. This created something astonishing. Within 200 years, the descendants of these poor peasants were running the entire Roman Empire. The rich Italian families that had founded Rome simply disappeared. They evaporated like water in the sun. By the year 200 AD, the Senate could not find enough members from Rome's original rich families. The Emperor Trajan had to recruit senators from the provinces, from the families of those peasants that the old aristocrats would not even have allowed to vote. Think about what happened. The people who built the greatest civilization in history slowly chose to stop existing. They were not killed by enemies. They were not destroyed by war. They simply walked away, one comfortable generation at a time. A young Roman aristocrat born around the year 100 AD inherited something terrible. He inherited a world that was already complete. There was nothing left to build. His great-grandfather had already conquered the enemies. The borders were already secure. The Republic was already dead. The emperor made all the real decisions. Even his personal life was managed by slaves. Slaves cooked his food. Slaves cleaned his house. Slaves taught his children. Slaves managed his money. Slaves even wrote his letters. There was literally nothing for him to do. He was born into the answer to every question his ancestors had asked. But he had no questions of his own. A Roman historian named Tacitus described this generation with horror. He said they had inherited everything except the ability to want anything. He called them shadows of men. When you have everything, you realize that everything is empty. When someone else has already earned all the honor, conquered all the enemies, built all the buildings, what is left for you? Nothing. So you stop participating. You stop trying. And most importantly, you stop wanting to pass anything to the next generation. Because there is nothing worth passing down. Here is the strangest part of this story. The Roman rich were not unhappy. They were not suffering. They were not depressed or tortured. They were comfortable. They had good wine and good food. They threw beautiful parties. They had everything. And that is exactly what killed them. A scientist named John Calhoun did an experiment in 1968. He created a perfect world for mice. Unlimited food. Unlimited water. No predators. No danger. No escape. In this perfect world, the mice stopped reproducing within a few generations. They also stopped socializing. They groomed themselves into beautiful perfection while quietly going extinct. Calhoun called this the death of the spirit. The mice died 2 deaths. First the spirit died, then the body died. The Roman aristocrats died the same 2 deaths, in the same order 2,000 years before Calhoun's experiment. The Romans had a word for what they had achieved. They called it odium. It means leisure. It means freedom from obligation. It means the complete absence of pressure or work. For most of Roman history, odium was a reward. You earned it at the end of a long life of public service and hard work. But by the late Empire, this changed. The rich were born into odium. They lived inside it their entire lives. They died inside it. They never experienced the work that was supposed to come before the leisure. Their ancestors had fought for the right to rest. They had inherited the rest without the fight. And the rest was what killed them. The Roman Empire officially ended between the years 400 and 476 AD. But the Roman aristocracy that had founded it was already dead by the year 200 AD. The empire kept existing for another 200 years, but it was like a body that had already died. It kept moving only because provincial recruits and slaves kept it running. The civilization had already abandoned itself. It did not fall to invaders. It was abandoned by the people who built it, one comfortable generation at a time, while the food was still on the table and the parties were still happening. Today, we face the same choice the Romans faced. We live in comfort. We have freedom. We have leisure. And like the Romans, many are choosing not to continue their families. But the question their history leaves us is this. What if the collapse of a civilization does not look like collapse from the inside? What if it looks exactly like comfort?